So when I talk about uh, this training, so this training will start from F5 load balancer topic, which called LTM module. Then we'll start with advanced WAF, which is called ASM. They've given the name as advanced WAF. It's not like advanced, but they have the name. Only F5 is terming as WAF, advanced WAF, but it's acting as your web application firewall. And some people also say ASM, that is called application plus security plus manager. So when I talk about this whole module, so this will have load balancer, WAF, plus we'll be covering certification related knowledge also after this. So when I talk about certification, now F5 has changed his certification whole that I will tell you later on. Previously, they were having F5 101, 201, but 101 is retired now. So they have introduced a new certifications which will help you to implement, deploy, and work in operations. So it's after a long time they've upgraded their certification. And F5 certification has a lot of value in market. It's not like other certification, but you will see in market when you go to any interview or when you apply in naukri.com, this has huge demand because it is prepared that content which F5 prepared for certification will not only help you to deploy, but it will help you to understand inside of what is happening at F5 layer. So that is the main thing. And last, I'll be helping you with F5 interview preparations where you can clear any interview which I told you. So when I talk about F5, F5 is just one company. Like you have worked on Redware maybe. Some people have worked on Citrix. Some people have worked on Barracuda, Imperva. So the same way F5 is company called F5 Networks. It's a very old company which was developed and it's a US based company. And the main thing which you need to understand the architecture and terms which I'll focus on. When I talk about F5 network, they have one product called Big IP. And now the product, new product will also come sooner. It has come in market that is called Big IP Next. That is like a panorama product where you can have single console and you will able to manage all modules, which you will understand later on. So when I talk about F5 networks, F5 networks has introduced their first product and it was introduced as Big IP. And when I talk about modules, there are different modules. When I talk about local traffic manager, that is acting as a load balancer. And term is called local traffic manager. Now someone can ask you what is local, that I will show you through diagram. And another module which they have is called F5 Advanced WAF. That is totally on your security part, cyber security. And this technology is in huge demand. We have very less engineers in market who knows about this product. Because load balancer, you know, but WAF, if you cover with load balancer, plus they have one module called GTM, that is called DNS solution. Global DNS, that is also in huge demand. Even automation comes, even AI comes, DNS will still remain in market. And as you know, our Prime Minister Modi also told that cybersecurity is a next generation security where you all needs to be expert. So that is my main agenda is to calculate both of this. If I talk about operating system, when I talk about both worked on TMOS. So like in Juniper, we have Junus. In Palo Alto, we have PAN OS. When I talk about F5, operating system is called TMOS. So base engine is same for any module. It's only the feature wise difference which we will have it. But basic knowledge, whether you have LTM WAF or GTM, or there is one more module which is called APM, that is called single sign-on solution, or some people say at SSL VPN solution. That is also part of your big IP product. Some people can say big IP, some people can say F5, some people can say LTM, GTM, or ASM. So don't get confused. All combination into big IP, and that is a product developed by F5 network. So that is the main thing which comes into picture. And when I talk about F5, F5 is called application delivery controller device. My main agenda is my customer wants, hey Vidit, I want 24 into 7 availability of my application. What does application means? Application means your website. Like sianets.com, I want 24 into 7 available. Customer also says that I need security. Like I want availability also, but I want that someone should not block or someone should not hack my website. And third thing which they want is scalability or performance. So that all is provided by your F5 network. That is critical to understand. Because when I talk about application delivery, I am talking about web application. So let's say I have a client. There are two clients. One is Vidit, one is Ravi Kumar. Who wants to? Vidit is sitting in India. Ravi is sitting in US. They want to access some of the application which is hosted on web server. So when I talk about any application you access, whether it's google.com, aws.com, that are hosted on web server. Some people say it's a web server. Some people say it's an app server. Now, what happen is previously when we don't have load balancer technology, we only had firewalls. So with it, Ravi Kumar were coming from internet. There are thousands of users who wants to connect to this website over firewall. What was the challenge which was happening was this web server can handle only 10 requests per second, let's say. But I was getting requests from internet 1000, 2000 per second. Now, what was the issue with only one server, which was hosting your application, sianets.com? What was the issue which happened was load, because one server cannot handle so much load. 1000 requests was not able to catered by this web server because your request was coming from here. The page, the web page which you see of sianets.com or any google.com are hosted on this server. But due to one server, we were getting slowness issue. Even let's say this server goes down, then there will be an outage situation. But my customer says, hey, with it, I need a device which should support 24 into 7 availability. In this case, I told them, okay, XYZ company, what we will do is we have multiple client coming from internet, let's say internet router. Then we have firewall. What we suggest is you place an application load balancer. That's what my ask to them that if you need 24/7 availability with redundancy, with security, I want you to place an F5 load balancer. And behind that, I want them to place multiple servers. Instead of one server, I want multiple servers to host my application. So in this case, what will be advantage, guys? If this server goes down, will your application still be available to internet? When I talk about sianets.com, even if this server goes down, these two servers still can send request to this. So there is a redundancy. Second thing, when I talk about F5 load balancer, they worked on load balancing algo. 1,000 requests are coming, like 10 requests from coming from here, 20 requests coming from here, 30 requests coming from here. They want to access cnets.com. What F5 will do is some of the request it will send here, some of the request it will send here, some of the request will send here. So that performance issue will not be there. So that I can deliver my application successful to my customer. So that is why it is called load balancer. Please understand the terms carefully. If your basics are not clear, then you will not able to understand. When I talk about load plus balancer, what does it means? Load means client request. And balancer means that I want my multiple clients who wants to access this website should get balanced. Their request should get balanced over multiple servers. That is called balancer. So that is the main agenda of your application delivery controller. I want my application to be delivered by F5. So F5 is called your controller. And your application delivery means when you access your application cnets.com, someone can watch your website. They want security, load balancing, and performance together. So when I talk, if simple term is someone wants to ask about load balancer device, what does it do? So you can tell them main motive for load balancer is to deliver application securely to end users. That is the main agenda of this course. I want my application to be delivered also, but I want security also and availability. That is what application delivery controller provides. Now, when I talk, this was about load balancer, basics of load balancer. Now I'll show you quick diagram of that. How sample traffic flow happens in load balancers. So let's say I have a client, I have a server load balancer. I have server 1, server 2, server 3, which is hosting my original application. These are all my applications. So that is why it is called web server or app server. You can say anything. So my main agenda is how the traffic flows when you have load balancer coming into picture. So there will be a sync packet when I talk about TCP handshake. How the traffic flows that you need to understand. So when a client wants to connect to, they will connect to cnets.com. And when I talk about F5 load balancer, guys, this is called full proxy architecture. When I talk about full proxy, there will be two connection. One between client to F5, that is called front end connection. So people will say front end, back end. So you need to understand these terms carefully. What does front end means? What does back end means? So this connection from client to F5, it's called your front end. And connection from F5 to the server, it's called your back end. So one question for you all. We will make this interactive also sessions because I don't want boring things. So when client wants to access sianets.com, they will access one IP or URL. Will client come to know that my request is going to this server or this server or this server? Anyone? You are a client. You are accessing banking website called ICICIbank.com. Do you know that from which server or which server my request is getting catered or completed? No, you don't care. For you, you want application availability. That's it. But in backend, how it works? There is a load balancing algo which comes into picture. By default, F5 supports round robin. There is a separate chapter which we will cover. Right now, I'm giving introduction. When I talk about round robin, what happens initially is there will be a traffic coming, let's say from here. Then first request will go here. Second request will go to this server. Third request will go to this server. That is what it has. So it's a combination of our availability, security part, and access control, all the things. And the operating system, which I'll show you later, TMOS is the operating system which it works. Now, let's go further on. Now, see this. F5 will make the decision on server. For this request, whether it should go to this server or this server, it is based on your load balancing algo that you need to understand. So this is the device which is placed in middle. That is why it is called proxy. It is placed between your client and your server. Now there are two types of proxy. One is forward proxy, and when F5 is called, that is called reverse proxy. So when I talk about forward proxy or reverse proxy, forward proxy is Zscaler, Prisma, that is called forward proxy. When I talk about load balancer, any load balancer, that is acting as your reverse proxy architecture. What is the difference between reverse proxy and forward proxy? That I'll show you right away. That is critical to understand. When I talk about forward proxy, many people have worked on proxy. I have a client sitting on internal network. I have a proxy here, Zscaler, let's say, and I have internet. On internet, let's say I want to access, right now IPL is going on. I want to see the score, ESPN correct info.com. So users traffic from internal wants to connect to internet. That is the main thing which they want. That is where forward proxy comes into picture. When users from internal network wants to connect to internet, what does it does? So it helps you to detect whether some content is good or not. I want my users to not miss or access any bad website. That is the main concept of forward proxy, right? So forward proxy is basically, let's say you are in college or you are in a company, will you able to access all website? No, there are restriction. So that restriction is applied here, right? I want URL filtering. I want that this proxy should help to detect, like in college we have a restriction, right? Then we had to bypass proxy. If you remember, when we were in college, we wanted to access some websites like gaming websites, we were not able to access it. So that is a concept of forward proxy. Any proxy like Zscaler, McAfee. So forward proxy sits between internal users and internet. So that is the meaning of forward proxy. It helps to for doing reverse proxy. It helps you to detect URL content. It helps that someone on internet wants to access which type of content. It will provide a security. But does it provide load balance? Anyone? Does it provide load balancing, Zscaler or any proxy? So it is only controlling and monitor your outgoing traffic. What is going outside? This is useful for business and organization, that what type of content Vidit can access, what type of content Ravi can access, what type of content Sharath can access. That is called forward proxy. So I can use a forward proxy to block access to certain website. That is my agenda. So that can be done by proxy. Filtering, actual filtering of your web traffic. This is called layer 7. So I can control based on my location. I can apply security, which traffic can access. Also, what does it do, guys? It helps from web-based threats also. If I don't allow bad website, then threats cannot come, right? There are phishing attacks happening. So that all can be done by proxy. That is the difference. So now I will talk about reverse proxy architecture. So what will happen is it provides security and it is helping to understand what content user is accessing. That is the main purpose of proxy. And that is called forward proxy architecture. When I talk about reverse proxy, guys, please understand now reverse proxy. All your load balancers, either it is F5 or it is Redware, Citrix NetScaler, that comes under reverse proxy. So reverse proxy is opposite. Your client are coming from internet. Then firewall is coming to picture. Then F5 is there. Then you have servers where your web application or your website is placed. So that is for inbound. Forward proxy bus for outbound traffic. That is the difference between forward proxy versus reverse proxy. So forward proxy, when I talk about, that is only for in to out. When I talk about reverse proxy, someone wants to connect from internet to internal network. That is called reverse proxy architecture. So it is forward proxy was between your web browser sitting on internal network to internet. And reverse proxy is someone wants to connect from internet from web browser to internal server. When you visit a website, your request will go through reverse proxy. So what does it happen? It provides security in middle. So that is why it is called middleman in middle device. It is not doing any URL filtering or something. It is just traffic is coming here. It will just forward the traffic based on availability of your servers. That is reverse proxy. But in forward proxy, it was doing content filtering and URL filtering. It helps me to detect which users are accessing which type of website. But in load balancer, but only difference is forward proxy does not provide load balancing. Reverse proxy provides load balancing. This can be a question which will be asked in an interview. Very, very important. So now I was showing you this. There was a SYN packet which is coming. Now load balancer will make decision of your server like this. Let's say it has chosen based on load balancing algo round robin server one. So your request will go to server one. Then you will have three-way handshake, SYN packet, SYNAC, and acknowledgement. That is how it goes. One TCP handshake comes into picture, then you have HTTP packet flow. So HTTP works on request and response header. And this protocol, TCP and HTTP, you should know, guys. If you need to become good in F5, these two protocol knowledge you should do. TCP plus HTTP. Because for WAF, you need to understand this HTTP headers. Now, where the load balancers is placed. Here is your load balancer which is placed. And here is your actual server. And it can be internal network or external network both. That is the simple picture of how F5 is placed. Now question comes into picture. Someone will ask you, can you please tell me where F5 should be placed? F5 load balancer I'm talking about. We need to understand load balancer placement. My question to you, whether F5 load balancer should be placed before firewall or after firewall, perimeter firewall, anyone on the chat. Question is F5 load balancer, when I talk about deployment, let's say you have in your architecture client, you have internet, you have firewalls, then you have servers. Now my question is, they want to deploy F5 load balancer. They want 24 into 7 availability plus security plus scalability. They want to place F5 in picture. Should it be placed here or should it be placed here? So as per best, as per F5, F5 should be placed after a firewall, before server. So F5 should be placed always mostly in DMZ zone. Because your traffic is coming from internet, they want to access your website. So there will be a DMZ zone. That is a separate internet zone for internet traffic. So if someone can ask, you should say that F5 works as a reverse proxy and it should be placed after a firewall. When I talk about network part, about virtual servers, pool members, then you will understand more into this, but you need to understand where should be deployment should happen. That is the main thing. What are the features which load balancer gives? When I talk about F5 load balancer, it provides you SSL offloading. We'll not discuss about that. It provides you full proxy. It provides you traffic optimization also. It is not a load balancer, but it is a device which can remove your load from web server so that all encryption and decryption will happen at F5 layer that we will discuss later on. But you need to understand that F5 is always placed between client and server. So client will initiate a communication to F5 and F5 will then initiate a communication to server. That is why it is called proxy, full proxy architecture. Now, let's discuss further on modules. We have discussed about modules. Now I will discuss about operating system. So when I talk about big IP, guys, big IP models are different. The base model is 2000 series, and the latest models which are running is I series and R series. So whenever you go for any interview, if they want to test your knowledge, they will ask you model number. On which model number you have worked. That is very critical. You need to understand model number. For that, there is a data sheet available that I will cover in internet to understand what was the base model. So base model is 2000. Latest models are I series and R series. That is very critical to understand. Now, how architecture hardware looks like. Let's say I want to buy an hardware of F5. You need to understand the port number. When I talk about load balancer, this hardware is same. Inside this, you can run LTM or WAF or GTM. You need to purchase license based on your features or modules. That thing you need to understand. There is no separate box for LTM or WAF or GTM. There will be one box F5 that have different modules, whether it's LTM, WAF or GTM that are modules. LTM is called your local traffic manager. GTM is called your DNS solution. And WAF is called your web application firewall. Please understand this. Now we'll talk about port numbers. So initially, when you want to deploy this from scratch, what is your first thing? When you want to deploy anything on F5, what is the first thing which will happen? You are sitting on, let's say this device you have to host on customer data center, which is hosted in US, and you are sitting on India. You want to configure management IP address. Now, question can come in interview. Very important thing. What is the default management IP of your F5 when it comes? That is 192.168.1.245. When I talk about load balancer, you have a separate management interface for management traffic, and you have a separate interface for data traffic. But once you are sitting in India, you have to configure this. You need to have a console of your F5. That is a separate console port. So you should know what are the different port numbers. So this is the console port. So you will plug your laptop. You have to go to your data center. You will tell your data center engineer to place a console port on this device. Then you have fan. Then you have LCD panel, which will tell you whether device is healthy or not. Then you have USB port. Let's say you have upgraded your F5, but image is not getting stored. It is not coming up. Then you have to restore using pen drive. So you will have USB ports also. Then you have failover port. So when I talk about failover port, that is called for high availability. So when you place in any company, F5 are placed in active and passive mode. That is very, very critical. Very, very important. What happens in your F5 high availability? That even your application, even a single F5 is giving you 24 into 7 availability. But if this device goes down, then you will not have 24 into 7 availability. So it's providing you redundancy on device level also. So that is critical, very, very important. So that is where how F5 is deployed. Now, one thing more which I need to understand, tell you that there is a failover port so that you can connect your devices in redundancy. Like in firewalls, you have redundancy. That is called HA port. Same where it is called failover port in F5, similar to HA port. Simple. High availability. So that if one device goes down, traffic can go to second device. Everything will be covered in detail. These are basics which you need to understand. Then we have Ethernet ports, SFP ports, and LCD panel. Now, typical setup of TMOS. What is the operating system which we are running in F5? What is the full form of TMOS? This will be asked. That is called Traffic Management Operating System. So you have a client and users over internet and traffic is going. So right now, please see, here is F5 in place. No, client is directly communicating to app server. There is no F5 which is placed in communication. So client is directly communicating to application server. Client is directly connecting to servers. But here there is no load balancing concept. But when load balancer comes in, how the traffic flows. Please understand this. When load balancer comes into picture, it maintains high availability. This is in interview they can ask you what are the advantages of placing load balancer. So it provides you high availability. Distributing of traffic equally. If server is utilized, then they can use other servers. Let's say this server is 90% utilized. So when F5 is in place, it will not send request to here. It will send request to other servers. That is an advantage of equal distribution of your traffic. That is very, very important. Third thing, optimize server resources because F5 is coming into picture. It's an hardware box or a virtual box. Previously, servers was handling your direct traffic. Now F5 will receive all your requests. Previously, all encryption and decryption was doing at server level. That was causing utilization issue. Now F5 is doing all encryption and decryption. That is what is called optimizing server resources. Next advantage, protect application from attacks. What type of attacks? Layer 7 or vast top 10. We will cover this in WAF course. Layer 7 attacks. All either it can be SQL injection, crowd-side scripting, all types of attacks it is capable to protect. That is very, very important, guys. Another thing, support cost. Because now you have F5, you will have single device to manage, but previously you have multiple servers which you wanted to understand CPU and other thing. So these are the few advantages of your load balancers when we talk about. Okay, now I'll show you here three main advantages of F5. It's a full proxy model for users and application server. So what happened in this case? You have performance, you have load balancer, you have availability. When F5 is placed between client and server, where your web application is hosted, you will have user in between, you have servers also, and you have F5. So a full proxy is built in, which will help you to secure your traffic, optimize, and load balancer. So that's what we want to see. It can provide you security also, optimization traffic also, and load balance also. So that is why it's giving you performance security. If someone says, customer says that, hey Vidit, or hey Ravi, or hey Sharath, I want availability, I want good performance, I want scalability, plus I want load balancer. What device you would suggest? You will say load balancer with WAF because both are interlinked. Because your WAF security policies are applied on VIP only. So VIP is your front end where all your traffic comes in. That is critical. Now, let's go further on. That is how in actual traffic comes in when I talk about TCP handshake. Client traffic will come to F5. F5 will send traffic to pool member. Initially, when F5 is placed, please understand this is very, very critical. How three-way handshake is come when F5 is placed in between your network. First, a three-way handshake is built between client and F5, like SYN, and acknowledgement. Then, can you see this? After that, F5 will choose pool member based on which algo? Load balancing algo. Then F5 will have another three-way handshake with pool member. SYN, acknowledgement. Then final your data will send. Let's say they want to access sianets.com. So that is why there are two separate connection. One between client to F5, one between F5 to server. Very, very important, guys. That is how TMOS operating system architecture looks like. So that is why I told there will be one connection between client to F5 that is called client side connection. And this connection is called your server side connection. That is what you need to understand. If you see here, your big IP is a full proxy. Full proxy, what does it mean? Have you heard about this term? We have heard about reverse proxy, or we have heard about a term called full forward proxy. But what is full proxy? It is only the name given to F5. Why? What does it mean? Is there will be a separate client connection. There will be a separate server connection. I'll tell you how does full proxy works. So there will be two separate three-way handshake. See, TCP is terminating on both sides of connection. One here and then a separate three-way handshake will be happen. So this traffic or this flow is not dependent on this flow. That I will show you how this full proxy architecture works. But you need to understand F5 is placed now between client and server. That's what the main thing. This we'll discuss tomorrow about the components. Now, 1 minute I want to talk about full proxy. Then I will show you other things in detail. We will have one Q&A for whatever topic. Then we will discuss later on. So this is how your traffic is in your organization, production environment when I talk about. This is without load balancer. See here router is placed, here firewall is there, then you have server where your original application is placed. Now when load balancer is placed, in between F5 is coming into picture. So what will happen? Anyone can tell me. Firewall will have public IP and your F5 will have your private IP. So you will need a security policy plus NAT on firewall. When F5 is placed after a firewall. In firewall, you need to have two things to be configured for a traffic. Let's say someone wants to access sianets.com, you should have a firewall policy and netting. That are the two things which you need. Now, when I talk about F5, F5 is placed available in which platform? You can deploy as a virtual edition. You can deploy it in cloud also. You can deploy it in hardware also. Like some people wants high performance with dedicated hardware. Then you have physical ADCs, application delivery controllers, where we have one virtual edition that is called F5VE. That is what we will do in this whole course. That is, we will deploy in VMware workstations. And third thing is some You can deploy physical, some you can deploy virtual. So it depends on your organization which platform is good, whether it's a virtual edition or an hardware level or it's a cloud platform. It depends on you. Which platform is good for your organization? There is a sales team which will help you. This one we have already covered. Now I will talk about TMOS architecture. This is called full proxy architecture. Please understand this technology, guys. Very, very critical. When F5 is placed in middle, see this. You have a separate TCP handshake between client and F5. Can you see? Then you will have a separate three-way handshake between F5 to the server. But in forward proxy, it does not happen. Here we have a separate connection at client side, a separate connection at server side. And F5 will have visibility of all your traffic, whether traffic is good or bad. It will have a, it can view your traffic, it can modify your traffic also. So full proxy means it will establish a separate connection here also and here also. This can be encrypted traffic. Encrypted means front end connection can be HTTPS, back end connection can be HTTP. So it can inspect your traffic, it can manipulate your traffic, or it can drop your traffic. When I talk about F5, it can inspect which traffic is good, it has that power. It can modify also your traffic and send to server. I'll cover the I rules, local traffic policy, which will help you to understand that. It can drop also. F5 has all that capability. So full proxy is named because they completely proxy connection incoming and outgoing. It has whole visibility of traffic end to end. So reverse proxies were good in traditional load balancing optimization, but full proxy has a complete visibility of your incoming and outgoing, what is coming from here to here, and when server is sending, what type of traffic is coming. See, this traffic can be encrypted, this can be plain text, because front end connection should be encrypted, right? When you access your website over the internet, it should be HTTPS. Backend connection can be HTTP, it can happen. It can be compressed here, it can be uncompressed here. And this one is your operating system architecture. When I talk about F5 big IP, whether it's in load balancer or ASM or DNS, it is same for everything. It has a separate management plane and it has a separate data plane. When I talk about management plane, when you take a GUI access, CLI access, that is going through management traffic. Or let's say you are doing any NTP configuration, all goes through management plane. But when I talk about data traffic, when user wants to access any website which is hosted on F5, that will call your data traffic. That is why it has a separate management port and it has a separate data port. And it has a separate high performance hardware SSL engine for encryption and decryption. That is very, very important. It has a separate compression engine. I rule is separate, that is for modification. That I will discuss later on. I don't want to confuse right now. You just understand what are the planes in F5, management plane and data plane. So TMOS is the main operating system for all your F5 products. There's a physical, eh, so it is providing and traffic management operating system. All management function. It has own dedicated CPU, memory. And this operating system works on which layer? Linux. It's a Linux based operating system. Now, when I talk about full proxy architecture, you can see this. When client is placed, when load balancer is placed, when a pool member is placed, you will have a three-way handshake between client and F5. Then you have a separate three-way handshake between F5 to the server. That is what I was telling about. Separate client, if you see in green color, and separate server connection. And then you have HTTP traffic. First three-way handshake, then HTTP GET request, then it will be sent to F5 to the server, then response. So when I talk about request and response traffic, guys, request traffic is when client will initiate any website. That is called HTTP GET. When server is responding to F5, that is called HTTP response traffic. And these ports we have already discussed. So now let me go through Q&A. Just 1 minute. I'll stop the recording.